Hey, can I ask you something a little personal? Have you ever worked so hard that you finally reached the life you used to pray for? Made more money than anyone in your family ever has? Hit goals that once felt impossible? And then one day, you stop for a second and think, why don't I actually feel happier? The numbers are there. The bank account is real. On paper, everything says you made it. But deep down, something still feels stuck in survival mode. You still hesitate before spending money. You still feel guilty buying things you can easily afford. You still carry this quiet fear that somehow it could all disappear tomorrow. It's strange, isn't it? How your life can change completely, but your mind still feels like the version of you that had nothing. And the weirdest part is, almost nobody talks about this. But a lot more people are carrying it than you think. Chapter 1: The Broke Kid That Never Really Went Away. Now here's the thing. When people talk about money problems, they usually mean not having enough. And yes, the struggle is real and hard. But there's this whole other layer that nobody prepares you for. What happens to your identity when the money situation changes, but your brain doesn't catch up yet? So let me paint a picture for you to understand. You grew up hearing things like, we can't afford that, or money doesn't grow on trees, or stop asking, we're broke. They slowly become part of you. You start seeing yourself as the broke kid, then the broke teenager, then the adult who's always behind, always trying to catch up. That mindset stays with you longer than people realize. And then one day, after years of grinding, sacrificing, and pushing yourself harder than anyone saw, things finally change. Maybe you land a better job, start a business, get a raise, finally break 6 figures. Whatever it is, you did it. That is the kind of money you once thought would fix everything. But instead of feeling secure, you feel uncomfortable. Instead of feeling proud, you feel guilty. Like somehow you don't fully deserve any of it. You feel like any second now, it's all going to disappear. You feel weird spending money on yourself, even though that's literally what you worked for all this time. At that point, it's not really about money anymore. It's about identity. Chapter 2: The Alarm System That Forgot to Turn Off. Okay, let me get a little nerdy for a second. But I promise this is actually useful. Your brain has this thing where it builds patterns over years and years. Therefore, it is obvious that when you grow up in financial stress, your nervous system learns to stay alert, as it is always scanning for what could go wrong and always preparing for the worst situation. That is what psychologists call a scarcity mindset. But I think that term makes it sound too simple. It's not just a mindset, it's almost like a survival mode that's been integrated into the way your subconscious and instincts work. And here's the cruel joke. Even when the scarcity is gone, the survival mode doesn't just automatically turn off. That means your brain is still running outdated software in the background. So whenever you get the money, your nervous system is still in protect and panic mode. That's why you might feel guilty for buying something nice, even when you can 100% afford it. Still stressed about money constantly, even with a solid savings account. Downplay your success around other people, especially family. Sabotage yourself financially, almost like you don't feel you deserve stability. Feel like an outsider in rooms you should belong in now. This isn't a weakness. This isn't being ungrateful. This is just what unprocessed fear looks like when the circumstances change faster than the psychology. Chapter 3: The Loneliest Place Between Who You Were and Who You're Becoming. This is where it starts to feel complicated. When your life changes financially, especially if you're the first in your family to build real wealth, the first to break out of survival mode, you find yourself caught between two worlds. The place you came from doesn't quite feel like home anymore. Not because you've forgotten it, but because your reality has changed. Maybe you no longer worry about making rent. Maybe you've moved somewhere nicer. Or maybe the conversations that once felt familiar now feel a little distant. But the strange part is, the new world doesn't feel yours entirely either. Because deep down, You still carry the version of yourself who counted every dollar, who learned not to expect too much, who never imagined being here. Even when you've earned your seat at the table, a part of you still wonders if you truly belong. This is what many people call the identity gap, and it can be incredibly lonely. You can't talk about it with the people you grew up with because it risks sounding ungrateful or like you're showing off. But opening up to the people around you now feels just as difficult because you're afraid they'll see you as an outsider. So you carry it quietly. You celebrate the wins, smile when you're supposed to, and keep moving forward. While underneath it all, you're still trying to figure out where you belong. Chapter 4. 4 tips that actually rewire how you see money and yourself. All right, I'm not going to leave you hanging. So, here's what actually helps. The first step is surprisingly simple. Put a name to what you're experiencing. Most people spend years thinking they're being irrational, ungrateful, or incapable of enjoying the life they've worked so hard to build. But when you finally understand what's happening, something shifts. You realize this isn't a personal failure. It's the emotional side of a transition that you're probably the first person to experience in your family. And there's something powerful about being able to say, oh, that's what this is. Because once you can name it, you stop treating every feeling of guilt, loneliness, or self-doubt as proof that something is wrong. On the contrary, you start seeing it for what it really is, a normal response to a life that has changed in ways you're still learning to navigate. And that awareness alone can make the burden much lighter. Second tip, allow yourself to grieve the version of you that got you here. It may sound strange, but that older version of you carried a lot. They learned how to survive uncertainty, make do with less, and keep going when life felt fragile. Those instincts protected you for a reason. You don't need to reject that person or pretend they never existed. But you don't have to keep living as them either. Every new chapter asks us to let go of something, even when that something once kept us safe. For some people, that process happens through journaling. For others, through therapy, long conversations, or quiet moments of reflection. The method matters less than the intention. What matters is giving yourself permission to acknowledge that chapter, appreciate what it gave you, and let it come to a close. Third tip, give yourself new experiences to grow into. The mind doesn't fully change because of logic alone. It also changes when reality keeps showing up differently from the story you've been carrying. If a part of you still believes you're one mistake away from losing everything, then sometimes the answer is to gently prove otherwise. Maybe that means spending money on something meaningful without apologizing for it. Not to impress anyone, not to be reckless, just to remind yourself that the life you've built is real and that you're allowed to enjoy it. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, maybe even undeserved, but that's okay. Growth often feels unfamiliar before it feels natural. The more experiences you give yourself that align with who you are today, the easier it becomes to trust that this new chapter truly belongs to you. Fourth tip, find your people. One of the hardest parts of outgrowing your old reality is feeling like no one around you fully understands what it's been like. That's why connection really matters. Find the people who have walked a similar path, whether it's a mentor, a community, or even one trusted friend. The goal isn't to get advice. It's to have a place where you can stop translating your experience for everyone else. A place where you can talk openly about the guilt, the loneliness, or the feeling that you still don't quite belong, and be met with understanding instead of confusion. Because some burdens become much lighter the moment you realize you're not carrying them alone. Final chapter. You didn't come this far just to stress in a nicer apartment. So before we wrap up, here's one thing worth remembering. Building wealth is a skill. Learning how to fully receive the life that comes with it is another. You can do everything right on paper and still carry guilt, fear, or the feeling that you don't quite belong. That doesn't mean you failed. It simply means there's another layer of growth waiting for you. The progress you've made is real. Everything you've made is real. They are proof of how far you've come. But the inner work matters too, because money can change your circumstances, but only you can change your relationship with them. That's what turns success from something you constantly worry about into something you can actually experience. You didn't work this hard just to bring old fears into a better life. You worked this hard to live differently. And that journey begins long before it shows up in a bank account. If this hit home for you, hit a like and drop a comment, okay? I genuinely want to hear your story. And share this with someone who needs it. Because I promise you, there's someone in your life going through this exact thing right now, totally silent about it. I'll see you in the next one.